So with the war raging in Ethiopia and the tensions between Sudan and Ethiopia, I want to talk about the last time Sudan and Ethiopia actually went to war. And this was all the way back in 1889, so more than 100 years ago. And at the time, Sudan was ruled by an Islamic caliphate. So Sudan was ruled by Egypt and the British Empire, and the Sudanese revolted in an Islamic revolution and took control of the country. So they were expanding in all directions, north, east, and west, and they decided to also invade Ethiopia. However, they stopped short of a full-scale invasion. They would. This was until he signed an agreement with the British and the Egyptians. So this agreement allowed for the Egyptian troops in Sudan to be evacuated via Ethiopia. They would go through Ethiopia to the port city of Massawa in current-day Eritrea, and from there they would be evacuated. So after the Emperor Johannes IV signed this agreement with the British, the Sudanese Mahdi considered him his enemy, and he decided to launch a full-scale invasion. So the Mahdists gathered at the town of Metemma, or also called Gallabat, and this is right on the current modern-day border between Sudan and Ethiopia. So from there, they decided that their target was the old imperial capital of Ethiopia, the city of Gondar. They took all the valuables, burned down the city, but then decided to withdraw because their fighters were not used to the cold, mountainous Ethiopian climate and terrain. Because Sudan is lowland and Ethiopia is mountainous, so it was hard for them to fight in the area. And also, most of the locals were against them because they were, Islamic fundamentalists, and the locals there are mainly Christians. So they withdrew back to Sudan. So the emperor of Ethiopia, despite its humiliating defeat, decided not to attack them because they were on the rise at the moment. They had defeated the British at the Battle of Shekan, and they defeated a lot of Egyptians in various different battles. So he decided not to attack them. However, they continued from their base at Al-Matamma to raid Ethiopian lands and plunder Ethiopian territory. And in one of these instances, they were actually defeated by a local warlord. So when the Emperor Johannes heard about that, he decided to go ahead and fight them. He gathered a huge army of 130,000 fighters. So when he got close to Al-Matamma, the Mahdists actually withdrew and they went one town back into the town of Gallabat. And they fortified the town heavily. Their numbers were 85,000, the Mahdists, and the Ethiopians were 130,000. So when the battle started, the Ethiopians were winning. They entered the town and they were winning. So the battle continued for a whole day, and when night fell, each camp retreated. So the Emperor Johannes was leading the battle from the front, and he was actually shot twice. But nobody knew about this. None of the Mahdists knew about this. So that night he ended up actually dying. He passed away and died. But still nobody knew. And the morale of the Ethiopians was high, and the Mahdists were on the brink of defeat. However, the Mahdists had a spy in the Ethiopian camp, and he went back and told them that the emperor had died. When the Mahdists heard this, they became euphoric. They left their camp and ambushed the Ethiopians early in the morning, killing most of their troops. The remaining Ethiopians fled back into Ethiopia. However, the Mahdists pursued them and ambushed them again 3 days later. They took the body of the dead emperor, they cut off his head, and they sent it to Khartoum, where it was paraded in front of crowds. In the end, the war didn't really benefit anybody. It caused a crisis in Ethiopia. The Mahdist army lost some of its best soldiers and commanders, and they were also unable to hold any Ethiopian territory because it's mountainous and cold, and they're not used to operating in that kind of environment. Also, the war against Ethiopia distracted them from their other battles against the Egyptians and the British. Thank you very much. Like and subscribe.